last half hour. And for this one, like I said, what show on a Thursday can go from here to London and Jacksonville, back to London, to Lima, and now to Seattle? Answer's this one, because we bring in our buddy Nico Moreno. And look at the lighting. Look at the key light. Look at that fill that's there. You're rocking and rolling, man.
What's going on, John? SDH family. There is a gleam of light, of hope here in the Pacific Northwest, and it's been a more positive week than we've had in quite some time. That, as you guys all know, there have been some gloomy days and some clouds above the founder stratosphere, but here we are. It is cup number 2 of Joe,
Okay.
so I'm ready to roll.
All right. I'm down with OPP. You know me. All right. So
Mhm.
obviously the big news is Paul Arriola. And if it's not the biggest news, it is big news. And so if you would please, sir, explain the contract machinations and being put on long-term injury, cap relief, dollar signs, all the impacts there. I know it's a big week off the field financially because you got to fix a problem now on the field where Paul Arriola is not going to be.
Yeah, so I think as expected, the team has announced that one, Paul Arriola has gone through successful surgery to repair their knee, and he has been placed on the end of season injury list, which does give Seattle big relief of about 600,000 for the salary cap, and potentially adds on to what they already have in terms of potential money to make a move and fill that position. And with Paul Arriola's versatility and Paul Arriola's attributes, the team had been looking for something similar. They were looking for a player within MLS, and they had been talking to. That's something we kind of touched on last week, which I thought was pretty funny because we had a comment about Kremasky, but the Sounders had been looking at Miami. They had been looking at Julian Gressel as a potential option. They've asked in the past about Robert Taylor. Kremasky was possibly one of those players that the team might have thought about, but they essentially are going to be using that room in the cap to bring in, per our reports, as Sandra Hard, Ryan Kent, and that's kind of been the new glimpse of hope that I was mentioning at the start of the show.
Ryan Kent, obviously, uh, being looked at, he's salary friendly, and you get the experience that is there with him. If it does end up coming to pass, I know that is the linked report and everything. But how does it now with the Arriola injury? What kind of pressure, or who has the most pressure on them in this offense with the Arriola duties that are no longer there? Who are you looking at to fill that void in it? Who's been there longer than, say, a Ryan Kent, who would be walking in the door? Who on that roster has the experience of being a part of the Seattle landscape that can fill that void from Arriola, or is it an unfillable void?
That's a good question because at this point, it honestly varies depending on what the team decides moving forward. Essentially, the guy that like for like will bring in what Paul Arriola was giving you during the times that Seattle plays with wingbacks is the other Paul Rothrock. And he's the guy that's been working that position. He has the motor, has the engine, uh, a different player, not as poised and as finished in terms of his services in the box, but he can be more electric and he can be more dynamic and create a little bit more on the offensive end in terms of runs into the box and goal attempts. He's a guy with a great feel for where to be. His field awareness is very good. The issue there, though, is the experience and can he do it consistently the way you were hoping Paul did. Now, if we go to the 4-2-3-1, and there were times where Paul played there as a left winger, I would say that it has to be Pedro de la Vega and or Jesus Ferreira, depending on how Brian Smetzer decides to move forward. At this point in time, Ferreira has been the point man when it comes to being the nine because Jordan Morris is not healthy. But my guess is that when everything hopefully gets pushed over the line, and we'll talk about updates on Ryan Kent right after this, but if this does go through, by the time that Ryan Kent is ready to go, you're going to have Jordan Morris healthy, and therefore you're going to have to figure out who is going to be playing that left wing position. And I think that essentially that should be Pedro. But where does Ferreira fall there? Do you play him on the right side? What do you do with Pedro? I mean, with Jesus Ferreira, as you're hoping that he gets a little bit more confidence, as you're hoping that he gets more acclimated into the system. Because if there's something that's true about Ferreira right now, is that he just hasn't looked synced in with the rest of the team. And quite honestly, he's looked like he's still not 100% in his conditioning. We looked at him yesterday in practice. He seems to be more active, more engaged. So slowly but surely, the end product and the end objective is that Ferreira is ready to go, and he should be a starter for this team.
I was going to ask about Ferreira. You're reading my notes because obviously the investment that was made and the promise that was there for Ferreira just has not happened. And what is the patience level of the? I guess we can take it two ways. What's the patience level of fan base, and what's the patience level of Brian Schmetzer in the front office about this investment that was made? The anticipation. Literally, it was what after his time on the U.S. national team, where he was averaging close to a goal a match. He's only scored 9 in his last 45 going into CONCACAF Champions Cup this year. So there's been something that's been off. What's the expectation level and the patience level here?
Oh man, that is again another great question. I think the patience level is there because of the investment that you made and the ultimate potential for a player that can be an X factor for your team. So there's he doesn't get a pass, but there are circumstances within his physical level that he came in to the team that does make it okay that he's kind of taking a little bit longer. Now, does that mean that he's not going to be criticized and that there's not this huge magnifying glass on top of his head in terms of fans criticizing the move, criticizing him as a player? No, that's going to continue to be there. And I've said this consistently, that just comes with the job, that comes with the role. Anytime that you are a big time player moving to a team, you're going to be scrutinized. But to me, I hear Brian Smetzer be very patient with what he's seen out of Herrera. He's been complimentary, praising a lot of the moments he did have throughout his time here in Seattle. He had some moments against Houston where you could see the IQ, you could see the touch, you could see the talent, you could see the half turn that he does do correctly. So I think that there's patience from the club and the staff, and there's confidence that he's going to figure it out. But from the outside, fans and the general people that are invested into this team outside of the organization, they have been very harsh and maybe less patient than the coaching staff is.
And I would mean, especially with the run in CONCACAF and all of the expectations. You've got Club World Cup coming up later on in the spring. So with all of these high profile events, you want all of all of those investments to come in and click. And you want Jordan to be healthy. You want Ferreira to click. You want Ferreira to be that pick to click. You want De La Vega to be healthy. You want him to work on the left hand side. So I would anticipate that the desires of the front office and the fans with all of this high profile stuff coming up, you want everything at 100% by the time you especially get into Club World Cup, where you're going to be seen on a global stage.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point. But I honestly, and this is my opinion, just reading the plank here, reading what I'm seeing in front of me, understanding the way the club moves, I don't know if Club World Cup is necessarily something that they are they know that they're going to be there to do a job, to compete at their best of their abilities. But being realistic, I think that all of the moves that they're making, and when they're hoping Ferreira is at 100%, is potentially more towards League Cup and potentially towards MLS play and MLS playoffs, because you hear it in Brian Smetzer talking about we're just there to compete, right? In Club World Cup, we built a roster for MLS play because it'd be unrealistic to say we're going to go all out to just dominate PSG and beat Atletico. Like those are unrealistic objectives. You want to be competitive. You want to play. You always want to win, but you don't want to focus the entirety of your season in something as almost unachievable as a Club World Cup. So when it comes to Paul Ferreira and this new signing in Ryan Kent potentially moving forward, those are moves that you're making to maximize the strength of your team more in June, July, uh, August, right? You're focused more on those other tournaments
Okay.
and playoffs because this team needs a good run in the playoffs. They need, if they're shooting for something, is they're shooting for a title in Leagues Cup and once again being a protagonist in MLS playoffs.
Okay. So now that we've talked about what could be, let's talk about the week that was out west.
Hold
Uh,
on. I got to give an update on Ryan Kent though.
okay.
So
Go for it.
I don't know what the audience has heard so far about Ryan Kent and where that is, but obviously Sandra Hart and myself we ended up breaking the story here on Monday. 28-year-old winger with lots of potential.
Mhm.
I'm guessing that you guys have already talked about the story of Ryan Kent and how he's come about, right?
Not really. Go for it.
So just real quickly, he is a free agent. He's a well-regarded attacker. He was at one point worth up to 20 million when he made his move to Fenerbahce, where that's where things get interesting. But he's well known for his times at Ranger, where he was a stud, loved by the fans. He is a Liverpool product with what has been mentioned a very creative, very high paced goal dangerous type of play, and his profile is very interesting, right? What's not interesting is that at his time in Fenerbahce, he fell off out of favor with the club. I have read that there was a potential move in January of last year to Lazio that fell through in a deadline trade, and that kind of started a bad relationship between the club, and that ultimately ended up in the player being excluded from the group and kind of almost being blacklisted at some sort of point in time. And therefore, it becomes so toxic that Jose Mourinho ends up sacking the player. He's the
Wow.
one that decides we need to part ways. And Fenerbahce ends up sending a press release that they have mutually parted ways. So this is in October. So the player hasn't necessarily been playing for beyond October,
Hmm.
but he's been out of contract since October. It might be a red flag that he hasn't been picked up by any team. There were apparently interest from Sevilla and a couple of other Spanish teams. He was linked to an Iranian team at one point. So why hasn't that really fallen through is something that we're looking at.
Yeah.
What type of shape he's in is something that the Sounders will be looking at. But here's the update. Ryan Kent is in Seattle. He
Okay.
arrived yesterday. He's walked around the facility, gotten plenty of reports from several people about him walking the facility, talking to players, talking to staff. I mean, not Sounder players precisely, but people around that the organization there.
Right.
Last I heard, they're trying to finalize this deal. And
Okay.
salary apparently is not even the biggest obstacle. My guess is that the tenure of their contract, what's going to happen next year, is part of the obstacles that they're kind of moving right now on how to sign Ryan Kent. Why? Because Seattle decided to make this move, which was, in their credit, creative, innovative, out of the box. People continue to criticize this team for being so conservative and in MLS and all these things. They move way out of the box in this one because they could manage it. They, as far as I know, wanted to sign this player till the end of December
Mhm.
with an option for next year, giving him all the leverage. However, my guess is that as a player, I don't want you to have all the leverage. I need some sort of security. I need to be able to say, I'm going to come here to play till December. And then what? I'm guessing that's where some of the final touches of this move need to be made. But team seems to be confident that they'll push this through the line, but they are currently trying to finalize this deal. And this is something that has not been out there just yet, but they are trying to finalize this deal. They're hoping that it happens, but it has to be under Seattle terms, in my opinion.
No doubt. All right. So let's blow through the week that was before we get into juice boxes before you get out of here for another Thursday. Last week, no goals on the board with Crew in NYC. Cincinnati and Atlanta, a 2-2 draw. Mr. OG, the own goal, helped out late for Atlanta United. Minnesota and LA, a 2-2 draw. Charlotte put 4 on San Jose. Red Bulls knocked off Toronto 2-1. Purple team beat DC 4-1. The Bradley Carnell Derby ended up with Bradley Carnell Current beating Bradley Carnell Old 1-0. LAFC shuts out Kansas City 2-0. So once again, we still don't know what version of Kansas City we're getting on a daily basis. Nashville gets 3 on Montreal for their 5th road game of to start the season. They end up sacking Laurent Courtois. We got into that all week long and saying how stupid that was. Portland shut out Colorado 3-0. Dallas over RSL 1-0. Chicago still continues to surprise with 3GB. Greg Berhalter beating Vancouver 3-1. Austin over San Diego 2-1. What sticks out from last week for you?
Well, for sure was the father son the father son bowl there with Vancouver and Chicago. Chicago looks good. They really do. It seems like Greg Berhalter has done a great deal in terms of that identity, the philosophical way that they attack. They seem to understand it, but I'm not as sold on it on this specific score line as others are. We got to remember that Vancouver was very minimized. No Pedro Vite, no Cubas. These are players that were obviously playing in the international window for their individual national teams. So we got to keep that in mind. But Chicago definitely looks good. I wanted to just say that Charlotte, man, they look really good. They look dangerous. But San Jose in this specific game forgave him time and time again. They should have started winning this game. Don't know what happened to Chicho. I mean, in front of goal, he's typically clinical. In this one, he had 2 gimmies, 1 header he usually puts away, and then at the end, a shot that he typically puts right in the corner, completely misses it. So I am sold on Charlotte. I think that they're a very balanced team. Love
Okay.
what Dean Smith's doing. Taha seems to give them a little bit of an X factor. So sold on Charlotte. And finally, uh, Cardinal is the real deal. And I thought that it was unfair that they moved him on when they did. We talked about it here. I could not be happier that he beat his old St. Louis team in the way that they did, because maybe the scoreline was 1-0, but I thought they were way more dominant beyond that scoreline. And man, I just like to see it. Now, finally, and I cannot let this go. Atlanta, they keep letting me down, man. I thought they were going to get in there, get that win. They start off hot. They're not as clinical as they should be, and then they continue to shoot themselves in the foot. That 2-2 was a little bit unexpected to me in the way that game started, but it's some of the things that kind of stood out with me from last week.
All right. So we'll save Atlanta United hosting NYC and Seattle going to San Jose for the end of it. New England and Red Bulls, I would recommend going to watch something else for 90 minutes. Toronto and Vancouver, I would recommend going to watch something else for 90 minutes. then that gets your afternoon taken care of. I mean, go watch international soccer. Go back to watching, Premier League and stuff. As everybody
If
comes,
not, just go to the grocery store, get something done, but don't worry about these two
get
games.
ready. Get ready for the night. That's what you need to do. Rapids hosting Charlotte. They're favored with the Prairie Dogs at a plus 131. Charlotte on the road is a plus 195. That one will be intriguing just on merit alone to see how Charlotte behaves on the road and at altitude. DC and Crew. DC is favored at home at a plus 148.
That is wild, man. Look, Columbus has struggled, but that's a little disrespectful there, I think. And look, they have. I don't want to get beyond that. This team without Cucho has looked powerless, and they just don't have that X factor up top. And Russell Rowe can only do so much, and Diego Rossi can only do so much. You could see the struggle that he's put in the effort without being able to see the results, and you could see him struggling with that. But that's a little disrespectful, man. What's the draw on this one?
Plus 247.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Let me write this one down. Yeah, absolutely.
Draw. Yeah, plus 247 in the composite with the DC and Crew.
I like that.
Messi and Friends, big favorites on the minus side, hosting the Fighting Carnels from Philadelphia. Chicago gets CF Montreal the match after they get rid of their head coach. So Fire, by the way, a minus 175. CF Montreal's a plus 421, and they still have Columbus on the road after this one.
I wouldn't think that at 600. God, Montreal is such a XL.
Dallas hosting Sporting at a minus 125. Loons hosting RSL at a minus 139. Nashville hosting FC Cincinnati at a plus 131. Cincinnati on the road, a plus 194 at Nashville. LAG hosting the Purple Team. LAG is a plus 127. Favored at home in the bottom of the standings in the West. Purple Team comes from one coast to the other, and they're a plus 188.
I need to know the scoreline in that one because, look, Orlando City has been great offensively, but I feel like Pedro Gallese has taken a step back in some sort of way. The defense is real shaky when it comes to that first line of defense, which is that holding midfield. Regardless of them having two real quality guys in Atuesta and Araujo, they just have not been great. Maybe there's a thing where they need to be more involved together and have a little bit more chemistry. But what's the goals on that one? Because I think this is going to be a high-scoring game.
Plus 3.5 is a plus 144.
144.
At plus 3.5. 4.5 is a plus 332 if you want to get really adventurous, but it flips at 3.25. So 3.5 is a plus 144 in that one.
Wow, I'm gonna write that 4.5 just in case. But look, this is a good game in terms of if you want a show of goals. I think both teams are offensively sound. They've had their issues defensively this season. I like the LA Galaxy starting to respond a little bit more. Still not the Galaxy of old. That's all right. It seems like Greg Vanney has slowly but surely started to figure out what he needs to do. I love what Christian Ramirez did last week. The little flick was just beautiful. I mean, that thing is just textbook delicious, right? So Christian Ramirez getting a little bit of confidence gives me confidence in that LA Galaxy team. As long as it's not Miguel Berry being your point man, I'm a happy camper. So LA Galaxy, Orlando, this is a good one. I'm going to go ahead and say that Orlando City wins this game.
Okay.
And I'll take the goals at 3.5.
Plus 188 for the Purple Team to win. So hang on to that one. I don't know. I don't think we've come up with a matchup for this one. Cali Classico applies when LAG goes and plays San Jose. We need one for San Diego and LAFC. And San Diego is favored, by the way, at Snapdragon at a plus 139 against LAFC in that one, which I also find intriguing. That's just me.
Say it again.
San Diego favored at home against LAFC plus 139.
Oh.
LAFC is a plus 181 to win. Your draw is a plus 245.
Yeah, man. I might just do that draw. Look, San Diego's been good, and they were good again against Austin. They have issues though, and Austin exploited those. Their defense is a little bit slow, and they tend to be risky in the way of play. They do get very high. I thought Brandon Vasquez should have scored at least 2 goals in this one, and he didn't. Um, if you can be direct, and LAFC can do that, they have the tools to do so. La Perla Martinez, man, he's been unreal. That goal he had just last week was the best goal of the week, in my opinion. I think LAFC can exploit what San Diego doesn't do well. And with, I think they had 4 starters out this past weekend. I can see this LAFC team having their way with San Diego. I do like the draw though in this one. Man, now I'm doubting myself. What's the turnover on the goals in this one?
Well, the draw is a plus 243. Just to let you know, San Diego and LAFC, and we definitely do appreciate the San Diego going up against LAFC. I started Dryer in fantasy, that didn't go well. Okay, early returns. Your 3.5 is a plus 209.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Plus
Oh
two,
yeah.
plus 209, and 3 is a buck and a half. A 3 even is a plus 150. 3.5 is a plus 209. So that's what you have on that one.
No. Let me get the 3.5, and I'll go with the draw. 3.5, and give me the draw.
Okay, so 3.5 in the draw is another plus 245. So you're busy there.
Mm-hmm.
Then all caps hosting Austin, favored at home on Sunday. Sunday night, Portland hosting Houston, favored as well to plus 114. We've saved the other two. Seattle on the road at San Jose, favored at a plus 148, taking on San Jose, who's a plus 168. What say you?
Oh man, that's a difficult one. I'm out of that. By the way, I'm all out on that one. This is the thing with San Jose. They struggle with transition defensively. We've seen that. We've known that. But they're offensively good enough where they can kind of pin back Seattle. Seattle has struggles of their own. They got to figure out a couple of things. Obed Vargas is back. New who's back. In what type of shape and form is New coming back? Don't know if he'd get a start right off the bat. He hasn't been at the training facilities since yesterday. We'll see if he'll be there today. Obed has doing some light work. My guess is that Obed will definitely be part of this team, playing a little bit higher in this one, I would expect. But San Jose is always a kind of a rock in the shoe for the Seattle Sounders, and there's no doubt about that. So in this one, what's the draw as well? Man, I'm just full of draws today.
Plus 241.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet. Why? Because Seattle defensively has been very sound. Seattle will try to overpossess this San Jose team. They have the better midfield. They can certainly control pace, control tempo. Can they do enough to beat this team right off the bat? I don't think so. Not at this particular moment. So I'll go with the draw in that one.
Then the last one on the board, Atlanta United hosting NYC, Saturday night, 7:40 kick Eastern time. Atlanta United minus 105 against NYC, draws a plus 260. NYC is a plus 268.
Yeah, I'm not touching this game either, but Atlanta should win this game. And I would be very disappointed if that's not the case. Miguel Almiron should be coming back. He had very good shift with against Colombia just this weekend. I think he played 90. But regardless of, Atlanta should be able to, with what we saw against Cincinnati, be able to control and beat this New York City FC team that has looked lackluster at times, has not been as good as we're used to seeing the New York City team. If there's a certainty that we can have into this game, is the Lat should have a big game, should have another big game. He's been so good, so close, but it seems to be just, I don't know if it's on luck because there's been some offsides, there's been some situations, but man, this should be a game where Lot is at least getting Jewel Brace in this one. So I'll take Atlanta, but I want no part of the juice boxes in this one.
No doubt. All right. So, what's going on with Pulso Sports? And I know that you're going to the Providence and Swedish bouncy house to find out what's going on up there. What else is going on?
Yeah, just go ahead and check out our recently added videos there in Pulso Sports. We talked to Christian Roldan about this matchup against Bruce Arena's San Jose squad. We talked to Brian Smetzer, and he kind of looks a little bit annoyed that the Ryan Kent stuff's already out there. He kind of mentioned that he will let people know when there's something official, unless there's reporters that know more than him. It's exactly what he said. So he did not seem too happy with the news there. But go ahead and check that out. We're going to have added content here from what we get today, what we get tomorrow, where the team will train and travel. Of course, do not miss Fridays. We do the What We Learned This Week with Jeremiah Chan on the No Serietes and Sandra Hart podcast network. We're going to go deep dive into everything that we find out with Ryan Kent. I expect more updates by tomorrow afternoon. So do check that out if you're interested on where this player is going to land, if he's going to land, and what could potentially mean for all those other players, with you very astutely brought up today. What does that mean for Pedro? What does that mean for Jesus? What does that mean for a guy like Georgie that's a fan favorite and has been developing? All of those things will touch up on what we learned this week. And then Monday as well, Love in Sporters with Ari Lallenwall. Go ahead and check that out.
As always, my friend, great to see you. And as always, doors always open. Love to see you. Love having you here on Thursdays as we roll through everything going on around Major League Soccer. Be safe. Have a great weekend. Have fun at the bouncy house, and we'll catch up with you next week.
You're the man, man.